Good evening. We are here at the Zoning Board of Appeals Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 at 120 Main Street in North Andover. I will do our wonderful paragraph. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the North Andover Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Specific information and the general guidelines for the remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with the right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, in-person attendance of members of the public and the board members will be permitted. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting live may do so on their televisions by turning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26 or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in the hearing but not attend the meeting in person, please email your questions, comments prior to or during the meeting to jbattersby@northandoverma.gov. That is J. Battersby, BATTERSBY, at northandoverma.gov. The question and comment will be read during the proceeding and responded to accordingly. Always a mouthful. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Acceptance of the minutes for June 13th, 2023.
I move that we accept the minutes.
I second.
Okay. Can I get a vote?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we are moving on to the continued public hearing for 335 Salem Street, which I believe you can just come forward, give us your name.
Mark Johnson, I represent the McLaughlins. And at the last meeting, the board had granted a variance, and we continued the application for a finding. We indicated that if the variance was not appealed, then we would withdraw the request for finding. So the variance was not appealed, so I have a letter withdrawing the request for variance.
Awesome.
Request for finding.
Okay, awesome. If you can just give that to Jen, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Do we need to vote on that?
No, because he's withdrawing.
Okay.
So we don't take any action. That also allows for it to come back within 2 years. And we have the new public hearing for 0 Winter Street, parcel 0110, AKA Lot 13, finding. Are you wanting us to do these, have the legal notices read together?
I think it makes sense to read them together because I think a lot of what you'll be hearing probably goes to both.
Okay.
But I'll defer to what you'd like to do.
Your rodeo. It
So-
makes sense to put them together, so we will put them together.
We'll put them together.
Okay, so Michael, if you can read the legal notice for the finding and the variance.
Variance, yep. I'm just looking for the notice of the finding. Here we go. All right. Notice is hereby given that the North Andover Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing at the North Andover Town Hall at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts, on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023, at 7:30 p.m. to all parties interested in the petition of Ellen Cashman, C.O. Johnson and Borenstein, LLC, for property at 0 Winter Street, map 104.C, parcel 0110, aka Lot 13, North Andover, Massachusetts, 01845 in the R1 zoning district. The applicant is requesting a finding pursuant to North Andover zoning bylaws, section 195-10.8B in the R1 zoning district for the purpose of overturning the building commissioner's denial dated May 19, 2023. Specifically, the applicant seeks a finding from the town of North Andover zoning bylaws from the requirements of section 195-7.1 lot area, attachment 3, table 2, summary of dimensional requirements, and section 195-7.1A, contiguous buildable area, for the purpose of overturning the building commissioner's denial dated May 19th, 2023, and allowing the construction of a single-family home and associated improvements on the property. All right, can I skip the first paragraph for the second one because it's identical? Okay. The applicant is also requesting variances pursuant to Town of North Andover zoning bylaws, Section 195-7.1, Lot Area, Attachment 3, Table 2, Summary of Dimensional Requirements, and Section 195-7.1A in the R1 zoning district for the purpose of constructing a new single-family home and associated improvements on the property. The applicant is requesting a variance pursuant to Town North Andover zoning bylaws, Section 195-7.1, Lot Area, Attachment 3, Table 2, Summary of Dimensional Requirements in the R1 zoning district. Specifically, applicant has requested that a lot area needing a relief variance of 41,233 square feet, i.e. 47%. The lot area proposed is 45,887 square feet, i.e. 53%. And the lot area required per Table 2 is 87,120 square feet, i.e. 100%. The applicant is also requesting a variance pursuant to Town of North Andover zoning bylaws, Section 195-7.1A, contiguous buildable area in the R1 zoning district. Specifically, applicant has requested CBA needing a relief variance of 48,848 square feet, i.e. 56%. The CBA proposed is 16,492 square feet, i.e. 19%, and the CBA required is 65,340 square feet, 75%. Applicant and supporting materials are available for review at the office of the zoning department located at 120 Main Street, North Andover, Massachusetts on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from the hour of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Tuesday from the hours of 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Friday from the hours of 8 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. By order of the Board of Appeals, Alexandria A. Jacobs, Esquire, Chair.
I feel like I should have another name after that.
The Eagle Tribune does very well on the cost of advertising. For the record, Mark Johnson, I'm here representing Ellen Cashman, who is a trustee. And what we're looking for tonight is either a finding or a variance. This is a lot, which is Lot 13, which was created prior to the zoning change, which went from 1 acre zoning to 2 acre zoning, and also prior to the zoning bylaw, which provided that resource areas would not count towards the CBC. And we had that whole conversation on the McLaughlin case, and that gets us into the and or, which I'm going to hope that everybody kind of remembers that section that we were talking about. Because lot 13 does have some buffer on it, which was similar to what we dealt with in the prior case. I believe, because we were provided a copy yesterday of a letter from Attorney Smolak and Bond. I'm not sure if the board has a copy of that letter.
I did get that this afternoon.
Okay, I got that late yesterday. And Attorney Bond's just restatement of the history of going from 1 acre zoning to 2 acre zoning is consistent with our research on it as well. Back in the mid-'80s, a determination was made by the town to change the zoning district from 1 acre zoning to 2 acre zoning. And my client, along with other people that's indicated in Attorney Bond's, Smolak and Bond's letter, were told to submit plans which created the 1 acre lot, and that they would be protected from any future change in zoning. And that was done. And a copy of the plan, and it's registered land, a copy of the plan is with the application. And it created actually 3 lots. They're held in separate ownership. 14 and 15 will be before this board next month.
For what?
They're all separate,
They're all in separate lots and separate ownership,
but all by essentially family,
all by different family members.
but the same family, right?
But different members of different families own different lots, because they all looked at it as this was in some ways their retirement. This was the money that they had. They put it into the lots, and with the belief that these lots were going to continue to be buildable lots. Now, the town continued to assess these lots as buildable lots. And on this particular lot, they've paid in excess for the period 2010 to 2023, which was when the records were available, paid over $46,000 in real estate taxes. I believe in 2021, the tax bill for lot 13 was $3,900. Previously, it had been $4,000 a year in taxes. Clearly,
Excuse me, and that's for the 3 lots?
no, that's just for lot 13.
For lot 13?
Just for lot 13. And to give you some idea, there's an unbuildable lot which contains kind of like a lake, and that actually is separately assessed, and that's unbuildable, and that was, the tax bill on that one was, I think, $9.79 or something that was unbuildable. But this lot has been taxed as a buildable lot. Taxes have been paid, and my client believed that this lot would remain a buildable lot because the plan predated zoning. And I think she, along with other people within the community, felt the same way. Based upon Attorney Bond's letter, that was the understanding. So now we fast forward, and my client is looking to sell a lot and finds out that the lot may not be considered to be a buildable lot because it doesn't meet current zoning. And the plan that has been submitted, prepared by Andover Consultants, and Dennis Gricci, who is the Andover consultant, is here tonight, lays out the zoning summary table, so you can see how this lot would compare to the current zoning requirements, and it doesn't meet it. It doesn't meet it because it was not created with the idea of meeting the 2-acre zoning, but created as grandfathering protection to maintain the 1-acre zoning, or the ability to build on this lot even after the change in zoning.
So you keep using the word grandfathered, and what is the basis by which you actually feel that this should be grandfathered?
Two things. The lots were created prior to the change in zoning. And the second is that the town has recognized this as a separate buildable lot based upon the real estate taxes that have been paid. And the town has also, post the zoning change, other lots within the area were issued building permits even though they were 1-acre lots, and even though the zoning had changed.
But how long after the change were those ones?
We laid it out in the, give me a second, we laid it out within the application.
Right.
One was August 24th, 94, 95, and then 97.
So the 90s,
The 90s, that's
about
correct.
10 years after the change, not 30.
That's correct. But at the same time, it was after the change, and there needs to be some uniformity in how the bylaws are applied as well.
Well, I'm going to let you finish first before I
Sure.
dive into that.
No, that's okay. It's a good day to dive with all the water we have. So, one of the arguments that we have is that you can't treat different property owners differently, and certain property owners were given building permits, I think, which is indicative of my client's understanding from the town back then, that the lot would be protected from the 2-acre zoning change. And I think that's also, if it wasn't a buildable lot, if it didn't meet the 2-acre zoning and couldn't obtain building permits, then the question becomes, why was it assessed as if it was a buildable lot? And why did my client pay, over $56,000 in taxes? That's just over a 10-year period or so. There's even more going back, but the assessor hadn't pulled the records. So it's a significant payment that's being made upon the belief that this was a buildable lot. That goes in a lot of ways to the argument on the question of the finding because we believe that the lot would be grandfathered, both upon the timing of it and what my client was told and what other people in town were told.
Yeah.
Hold
And-
on, let him, I want him to be able to finish everything.
And the way the lot has been assessed. I'm happy to stop on the finding argument and then move on to the variance or complete it all, or.
I want to stick with it for one moment, which is that, let's say for the moment that we agreed with your argument and that this should be viewed as a 1 acre lot rather than a 2 acre lot requirement, that, I think my math is right, you would still not fit under the contiguous buildable area requirement. Is that correct?
Well, I think we go, that takes us back to the question of whether or not the buffer zone would be considered to be.
So we're now going back to the same question that we had before,
That
on
we
the
had
previous
before.
meeting.
That's
Okay,
correct.
I'm not going to relitigate that here because the
No,
folks on
and-
the board went through it for a substantial amount of time.
And that's why I indicated I wasn't going to go through it again unless you
Sure.
wanted me to.
Yeah, okay,
So,
so,
I have a question
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that piece of though. So we talked about the buffer zone, and then there was some discussion about what the resource area actually is, the wetland or the buffer zone. Sort of separate from the and/or question. So is your contiguous area calculated on the area remain outside of the buffer zone or outside of the actual wetland?
Yeah, do you want to come up and you can answer that question? I've learned not to answer for engineers and surveyors.
And if you could just give us your name.
Good evening, Dennis Gricci with Andover Consultants. So to answer the question, in discussions, I think with the building department, in preparation of the plan, we added the areas of both the lot, the contiguous buildable area without the wetland and without the buffer zone. So if you look at the zoning summary table, we have the required area for the lot area existing is 45,887. The CBA is 43,150, excluding the actual wetland. And the actual wetland area itself. And then the area outside the buffer zone would be the area of 60,492, which excludes the resource area and the 100-foot buffer zone.
Okay.
So we just put all that information in the chart just to make it available to the board.
So, 43,150 square feet is the amount that is outside of a legally defined wetland. And the required would be 65,340. That's like the threshold, so that's where we're at, right?
That's if it's considered a 2-acre lot. With the 2-acre zoning,
Well, yeah, but also, I think there was some question as to what,
Whether or
if
not
the
that's
resource
right.
area includes the buffer zone or
Well, no, I was
just
clarifying, so this is like the area outside of the
That.
wetland itself, not including
Yeah.
the buffer zone.
Right, but when they use in the,
No, I understand.
In the code,
Well, I
if
was
they
just
use the word,
clarifying where
yeah.
we were without including the buffer zone.
yes.
So I've got a couple, these are just for some clarity. They tie to both of the proposals here. But first of all, the letter by Ellen Cashman and your comments, I'd like a little more background on lot 14 and 15. So those are currently undeveloped lots.
That's
They're
correct.
they're within the family, but under different
They're under
ownership.
different trusts.
They're different trusts, so it's all the Cashman family, but it's owned by like a cousin or a brother or a sister are trustees of the trusts.
Okay.
So it's not a complete stranger. It's not like you and I.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the questions I have, because I'm just a little confused, because what we're dealing with, we have labeled as 0 Winter Street. And I know there's multiple lots that this family owns right in this area. So I'm looking at a permit to build for 863 Dale Street. Does that currently have a house on it?
Yes.
And there's a permit.
Ellen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'll take your yes. Her yes is your yes.
Okay.
875 Dale Street. Is there anything on that?
There is.
Okay. So what I can say in terms of other properties that have been issued permits, we have no control over permitting, obviously. That comes down to the building inspector. I obviously can't speak to anything that was done in 1994, 1995, 1996. It makes a little bit more sense to me that those only being a decade out would somewhat be granted versus 30 years. But again, in terms of issuing a permit to build or any kind of permits, it's a building inspector. So we can't as a board look at that as our guidance. And in terms of zoning board, just so that we're clear, every application is looked at on its own merits. It's completely regardless of what we've done 2 years ago, what we did 6 months ago, what we did a month ago. Depending on what we do here today, someone 3 months from now can't look back and say, hey, look at this one. Because one of the biggest things that you will get from anybody who's been on the zoning board is every single application is looked at on its own merits, regardless of what's been done in the past, which I know can sometimes be a tough pill to swallow in terms of that aspect of it.
I was not saying that this board had issued decisions.
And-
Definitely. What I was indicating was that it appears that your building department issued permits, and I'm not sure if it matters whether or not it was 10 years or 30 years later. It was still post-zoning change, which was my client's understanding, was that creating these lots, creating the plan, would provide her protection from the change in zoning. And the building permits that were issued post-zoning change were consistent with that, appear to be consistent with my client's understanding of that.
And if we had the building inspector that was around
I
from
know.
1994, 1995, 1996, we might be able to ask him what his thought process was 30 years ago.
But no, and that just goes to the whole question of uniformity in the way things are done. And also, I think it reinforces my client's belief that she was told that these lots would be considered to be buildable lots, and consistent with what the assessors department has done in the town, which was to continue to assess these lots individually as buildable lots.
And I can understand, I wish the zoning board had some kind of a control over that, but obviously in terms of how lots are labeled, whether it's buildable, not buildable, the way they're taxed.
No, I'm just saying that I think you can, hopefully you can understand why my client believed that she did have buildable lots, given I understand what she was told. It appears from Attorney Smolak's letter, Attorney Vaughn's letter, that that's consistent with what people were told, and then being assessed and paying taxes as if it was a buildable lot all these years.
And the letter from Smolak and Bond also includes what he describes at least as the actual warrant article from the town meeting where they changed the zoning laws that says, in the highlighted section of that, the board has modified the article to make it explicitly clear that this bylaw change will affect new lots, not existing lots. Presuming that these lots were then existing before this vote, that was the whole point, right?
Yep.
It seems explicit in the warrant article there that it wouldn't apply to these lots,
Well, the
right?
problem is that one of the things we have now that we have to look at is, and I'm sure all of us on the board, there are concerns now of wetlands and flooding. And as we have all experienced today, flooding can be a major problem. And that is something that I can tell you right now, I don't see any information regarding how a new construction is going to affect the flooding. And that's something that has been raised by neighbors. And one of the things we look at now is the way things were 30 years ago versus what they look like today. When you're looking at making a decision, you have to take into consideration not only what the applicant is asking for, but also, the aesthetics of what we're looking at. And this looks like kind of a big house. One of the things I do want to ask, because I've made this mistake and I learned from my mistakes, this attic, it looks like a walk-up attic, right? Is that a walk up, or is it a pull the stairs down and you crunch over like it was built in 1986? like my house?
Since I don't know, I don't want to guess.
Okay.
But, I mean, a couple of things, and we certainly can, I haven't seen the neighbors' letters, but if there's questions raised as to flooding.
And I can tell you, it wouldn't be on, that wouldn't be on Jen. They have literally
Oh, no,
just
no.
been coming in this afternoon.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it was, but I'm just saying we're happy to, we're going to be here next month anyway. I'm happy to, to address those letters.
And this can help you for your meetings next month when we're dealing with 14 and
Yeah.
15. The water is going to be an issue.
Okay, no, and I appreciate you telling us that.
So that can get brought up then.
Okay. Anything else, any other letters that we should look to address, or?
So I will tell you, one letter comes across that is the biggest issue that they're bringing up is flooding and the wetlands. It's basically, like everybody, when they're having new construction put right next door, is now you're going to have a big, huge area that's a driveway, which wasn't once driveway, and you're gonna have a big, huge area that's a house that was once grass. So that's one. I believe another email I got was also addressing the water issues.
Okay.
And then you have Mr. Vaughn's letter in support, and another person who's in support, so they obviously don't address any issues that they have.
Okay.
But so far, all I have heard about is water, and where
Okay.
the water's going.
I've written it down.
So, did you receive what
No.
we've received today? Have you received, because when we went through this before, you did not have what we had. And there's pictures that go with the flooding.
I have not, but I assume I'll
Okay,
get a
well,
copy
you'll
of
need
it.
to get those. Last time we went through this before, we were looking at things that you did not have.
Right, I think you just received these.
Yeah, we did.
They
So
don't-
what I'm gonna do, you have the one
Okay,
from
thank you.
Sarah?
Yes.
Okay. I will make sure that Jen gets you, I think Jen might be one more other email.
Yes.
Okay. I will make sure Jen gets those to you. It wouldn't have done you any good.
It wouldn't have mattered.
This is sometimes the disadvantage of, people look at it as public comment, so emails don't come in until the day of.
And I understand that, and, no, and we're happy to address it at the next meeting.
So, I am curious on this diagram. I don't see where the driveway, does it enter from Dale, or does the driveway enter from Winter?
Yeah, that's something I was gonna ask about as well.
It would enter from Winter Street. So we haven't developed we haven't designed the site plan yet. I think the intent of this was to show an approximate dwelling location.
Well, we'd
So
also
it's
need
gonna
to
be
see,
a 114-foot driveway.
Yes.
for approval, we would need driveway
Okay.
on the plans.
And that's also where the wetlands
Right, I was
is
gonna
too.
say, especially because it goes through the buffer zone.
And I drove by this today, and these pictures look like they were probably taken today. But like that driveway that's there, like there's sunken areas and water on either side, so I can't imagine it's gonna move without some significant engineering.
I think the final location of the driveway would be dictated by the Conservation Commission, so if we were to show it on a plan,
When do you guys go to conservation?
We go to conservation after we. hopefully
After you're
get-
completed here?
After we complete it here.
I always hate that.
Conservation requires you to apply for all of the permits before we go to conservation, and going to conservation before we know that we have the approval from this board would not.
So I appreciate that it's quite possible that conservation will ask for changes, right, on whatever you give us.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to have some idea of what you're thinking, because given that part of what you're asking, either a variance or a finding on, is with regards to the buildable lot area and the reasons that that rule exists, right? And so when thinking about a variance, for me, part of that is going to be, well, okay, you're asking for, from a variance perspective, if you're asking for an exception to this rule, how do I think about what you are doing in terms of being in that space?
Okay, no, that's fair, and we'll look to address that, hopefully at the next meeting.
So you're looking to have the driveway go right through the buffer zone? I mean, is that, like, if I'm looking at this, are we?
or
is the dri-
skirting along the side of the buffer zone.
So basically, it's gonna go up toward where it says winter on the map.
Right.
Which current driveway that's in this picture goes like straight out from the
Yeah.
garage.
Driveways are allowed within the buffer zone. I think the setback is, I think it's 50 feet for a driveway for conservation.
AC Landscaping Britain.
So I drove out there and I was able to, I didn't think I was able to see very much at all. Okay, so first of all, I started out looking for zero winter, which doesn't exist, okay. But I've been in that area countless times. I've never seen a garage. I mean, now I'm gonna say from Winter or from Dale, it's recessed in the middle, if I'm on Dale, is it behind that barn? Where's the garage?
You can see it from Winter.
You can see it from up there.
It's shown on the plan on this, as existing garage to be raised. It is visible from Winter Street. It might just be where you're looking at it from Winter Street.
It might be what you thought was a barn.
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It does kind of look like it's part of the corner lot there on the corner of Dale and Winter. There's even like a mown lawn between the two.
Okay.
So the problem we're gonna have is that you have to go through conservation. And I'm just trying to think ahead, because I don't want you guys having to come back. If you put a driveway on the plans and conservation doesn't like where it is, granted, I don't know where else conservation would want you to put it, then it messes things up for what's been approved here.
Then we may have to come back here for, if it's considered to be a major modification. I mean,
Which I will tell you I wouldn't want you to do. But I do need some kind of reporting on what this large of a driveway, because whether, one way or another, it's going out to Winter Street, right? I need to know what kind of effect that's gonna have with the water.
okay.
Whether it's off to the left of the property, the right of the property, straight down the middle. We need to have something that gives us an idea of that. Especially with, if this is the road, it already looks nice and puddly.
Now, along with that, the building is quite far back from Winter Street, further back than the existing garage. Is the reason for that about preserving setbacks, or is there some other reason why it is quite so far back? Is that the topology of the land?
There was a few reasons we set it back as far as we did. So we have not been before Conservation Commission yet. We do have to fit a septic system on the site.
Okay.
So for those two reasons, we kind of wanted to give ourselves flexibility to put the system either in the back or the front of the lot. And there are setbacks associated with the leaching field to the wetlands. So like I said, we have not fully designed the plan. I think the intent of this was to show that the 4-bedroom, the dwelling could fit on the lot within the setbacks.
Okay.
So you're preserving nearly the only buildable land outside of the buffer zone for the septic, is that the idea?
That would be the thought. Yeah, put it in the front yard.
I mean, you do understand my concern of everything you're looking for.
Okay.
In terms of, 100, I don't like seeing double digits, and double digits, even the 50s, are incredibly uncomfortable to me.
So, we've been together now for a few months, and so I'm thinking back to another discussion that we had in prior situations, and that is, we've run into this twice in the last 2-3 months. And it's around, now that it's around, I'll call it, the rain falls in the environment today. Okay, and then the building, okay, we have the driveway, we have the building, and then there's the new environment, and in these other projects, there was analysis done predicting the impact of today's environment versus the future's environment, whatever that test is called. So
The runoff measurements.
What is it?
The runoff measurements
Okay,
from the
and
property.
so that's what's on my mind. I'm thinking about especially in light of the emails and the pictures now, to understand where is this, what is the outcome once a structure and the driveway and everything is developed, what's gonna happen there? I mean, I think we need to do that for the neighbors that are there.
Yeah, your concern is, post-construction, will the runoff increase going to the neighbors?
Correct, yeah.
And maybe also going to this pond on this unbuildable lot, because I mean, that, like many people's properties back up onto that pond. I mean, if we're shunting all of the water from 13 just down in there, I don't know what that would do to the water levels. I definitely didn't look at 14 and 15 when I was down there, so I don't know what the topography is like. I know the ones along Dale Street look like they're significantly higher than the pond, right? In elevation.
And I want to reiterate a little bit of what our chair just said a moment ago, which is that you are asking for not only large variances or a significant finding, you're asking for them stacked on top of each other, right? That these are multiple things that you're asking for large changes for. And so, you know, I'm just throwing it out there that it's a lot for this board to be considering.
No, I understand that, and I think my response to that is that we need the variances if it's considered to be 2-acre zoning. If we're not grandfathered into the 1-acre zoning, then that's the variances that we will need to meet current zoning.
But even if you need a finding, you effectively need 2 findings, right? Like, it is one thing that we are signing off on, but it is 2 rationales, right? There is both the rationale that we should treat this as a 1-acre lot instead of a 2-acre lot, and then second, that we should have a completely different reading about wetland buffer zones than we have used for the past 30 years.
No, I think it's actually the same, in that if we're grandfathered, then we would be grandfathered from zoning changes post-plan, which would grandfather us from other zoning changes as well. Now, I mean, when you look at how do we comply to 2-acre zoning and current zoning, that's when we need more variances, and that's when you get into the number of variances. But that's because we're trying to build on a lot that my client always believed was a buildable lot.
But one of the things that's hard for me to swallow is you're talking about when the town was 1-acre lots 30 years ago. Think about what houses looked like 30 years ago compared. You're trying to put a 2023 house on a 1986 lot. Different from putting like a 1986 house on a 1986 lot.
Is it the size of the house that creates an issue?
I mean, I don't know what it's going to do in terms of runoff.
No, and I understand that, and I think we need to get you some information on the runoff. I mean, obviously, these pictures were taken on one of the worst rain events that we've had in a long time.
Because obviously, bigger house, right? Now it's more area.
No, I understand, and if part of the concern is that we should look at the size of the house that you think may make a difference, then I think we're happy to look at the size of the house as well.
I will tell you, I don't like the idea in the first place of having to essentially ignore all of the zoning changes we have made in the last 30 years to go backwards. It's an unfortunate situation, and I appreciate it probably more so even so because when our house was bought, we weren't abutting up to wetlands. We could have put a huge addition on the back of our house. And guess what? Decades have gone by, that wetlands has come up. And now I can't do what I want because I have this 1,500 foot. You guys are essentially as if I were to go to conservation and say, hey, conservation, ignore the fact that the wetlands have moved over the last decade.
I think the philosophical difference we have is that a zoning change was made, it got through town meeting with certain understandings, and one of the understandings were that lots that were created prior to the zoning change would still be considered buildable lots, that they would not be subject to 2-acre zoning. And it didn't have a limitation on it, and that's what appears, at least according to Attorney Vaughn's.
But again, you're trying to use one argument to make 2, right? Because I'm not convinced that was the rationale at all when the wetland buffers and such were created, right? Like those are again different things. I know you want to make them one thing, but they're really different things.
But couldn't we potentially, on the findings, find for one of those items?
No.
No, because they're
No.
grouped in the.
They're grouped
in
together, so
Yeah,
it's-
so the
You can't-
finding is
you-
simply asking for us to let him build.
You couldn't do the variance for the contiguous area and the finding for the lot
Not the way
area?
it's written
No.
right now.
No.
It, and again, if we narrow it down to, which of the, I mean, we were starting with the assumption that we're grandfathered based upon what happened at town meeting, based upon the lots being created. If the next question is, are we grandfathered from the change in the bylaw and the definition of the CBA to take out resource areas? We're back to the discussion we had at the previous meeting, but then we're talking about one issue as opposed to a number of different issues. And then that brings us back to that discussion.
Right, but my point, I guess, is that we still have to decide that first one. And so I'm just laying out for you that you're setting for yourself a very challenging course of having multiple things that we all need to agree on, or enough of us need to agree on simultaneously in order to approve this.
Well, and my hope is that there may be some agreement that the lot was exempt from future zoning based upon what happened at town meeting, based upon the assessment going forward and the like, and it narrows down the discussion as to the buffer area.
So speaking of agreement, I think in the Smolak and Vaughn letter, he mentions that this idea that if you parcel out your property into 1 acre lots now, it'll be like that in perpetuity was disseminated widely around town. That's sort of like the image that he paints. Did anyone else do this that we know of?
I mean, I don't know, but it wouldn't matter anyway.
Well, I mean, in terms of
Well,
the,
according to council, this people did in 1995, and 1996, get building permits for 1 acre lots
Right.
that were done prior to the 1986.
was that
change.
not all still part of the Cashman Trust?
No.
Family trust?
No, he's talking different, I believe,
Yeah, I mean, we've given copies of the building permits, and there might be one that was,
one's a realty company. I'm assuming is one of the ones you're addressing.
it looks like there was one issued for Phoenix Realty
Yeah.
Trust. One was issued to Joan Cashman in 1995, 1997.
So here's my
So
thing.
two of them.
So, yeah,
The ones that were done for the Cashman family, they did too.
and that would be consistent with their understanding, that these lots were protected. I mean, that's all consistent with Attorney Bond's letter, what was said at town meeting, and what was done post zoning change.
Attorney Vaughn, I'm assuming he wrote this as counsel. His firm isn't located anywhere near the property,
So,
right?
the hardest thing for me is I'm very challenged at this point with the continuous referencing, going back to what happened in the 80s, in the 90s. We're all making assumptions on this, and that for me to do my job, I'm trying to understand the neighborhood as it exists today and the impact to the neighbors and what the neighbors are looking for and how things have changed over 30 years. So because it's hearsay, it's not fact, it's someone's opinion or this is someone's understanding. If I asked you right now to tell me what did I just say to you, I don't think you'd be able to answer, because you're interpreting what you want to interpret.
How do we speak to the fact that it's been taxed as buildable land for the
It's
last
not.
30 years? Is
Listen,
that-
go on
a
town
thing?
records and you're gonna find a house that's actually a single-family house, labeled as a two-family house.
and
that's-
taxed differently for that?
Well, my point being is that we have no control over how the town taxes it. And that, in all honesty, would be an issue for the homeowner to bring to town hall and say, you taxed me this whole time. I don't know if there's, because I've never had to deal with this, if there's a grace period where you have to address it, if you can only, IRS can only come after you for 3 years. So I don't know how far back on property taxes you can go.
But it doesn't have any bearing on what we're doing.
No.
I think it actually has a bearing on the hardship. Because the hardship is financial or otherwise, so it does have a bearing on the hardship.
Yeah, but I'm also, saying that would be, I don't know enough about how you assess tax value and things like that, but I can imagine in an environment where you'd be worried about potential fraud of dividing up property into lots that are too small and then combining them later at a later date to build.
I have a question. Do you happen to know, or does maybe the trustee happen to know, the size of 875 Dale Street? How many square feet that property is? The house, not the land. If she wants, can you just,
Yeah, I'm Ellen Cashman, and I would guess that they're probably.
can you just go to the podium? Sorry, it has to be able to record you.
That's okay. I'm Ellen Cashman, and both of the houses, I would guess, are between 3,000 and 3,500 square feet.
The two houses, the one at 875 and the one at 863?
863 is actually right next to my house, which is not 3,000 square feet, but could I also make another clarification while I'm
Sure.
here? So the wetland area, both by the street, first of all, I've lived there my whole life, so I've watched the land my whole life. So the wetland area by the driveway, going into the garage, every once in a while has a puddle in it. I'm in and out of there all the time. 7 inches of rain today I don't think is indicative of what it usually is. Back in the 80s, before Winter Street was even paved, that's how old I am, there was a wet area there, and the highway department put a pipe under the street, so it drained across the street. That pipe eventually got clogged, and that's why the water backs up to the edge of that driveway now. So that's that wetland. The pond on the area has no feed in or out. It actually was created because when my father was building the house in the 50s, he needed some topsoil for the front lawn. So he scraped enough topsoil for him to use, but that created an indentation. In all the years that I've lived there, and I think if you looked at the wetland survey back in the 80s when we subdivided the land, and the wetland survey that was recently done, there's basically no change to the wetlands at all. Usually in the summer, that pond totally dries up. This summer, we've had a wet summer, so it does have some water in it, but that's unusual. The field, the open field that you see is never wet. The area on lot 13, occasionally, if it's raining cats and dogs, the soil may be wet. So I don't see that there's going to be much of a danger to any of the neighbors' houses or any of the homes that would be built in that area, because it's not like a river that's going to overflow. It doesn't go anywhere. So I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, actually, I do have one quick question before you sit about the pipe that you mentioned. It sounds like it's clogged, so maybe it's not a factor anymore. But that goes across Winter Street
Yes,
towards the abutters that are concerned about
between
flooding.
number
I believe.
360 and 380, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, do you know when the garage was built?
Yes, it was built in the 60s as actually a horse barn for us.
Any other board members? Any other questions?
I have no questions.
Do we want to have?
Well, I guess I have,
Yeah,
I guess I have some, there seem to be, again, some legal questions. And I think they might apply to the other two lots when they come in as well. So I was wondering if the town council can comment on this being grandfathered per, per what Smolak and Vaughn highlighted here, saying that wouldn't affect existing lots. If we can find out the, get agreement on that from town council or not, that sort of makes one issue go away. Or if they tell us clearly that it doesn't apply, then, you know, at least we have an answer. It's going to apply to all three of these.
It is going to apply to all three of them. I can reach out to town council. It's the best I can do. I don't know what her take on it would be.
I'm not sure either. I just read Attorney Vaughn's letter last night, so I've not fully digested it.
It's always nice when you have another attorney backing you.
I think Attorney Vaughn wanted to just give some just give some context for what was here. And I think he wrote the letter clearly in support of the petition. And I think he felt that in reading the letter, that he had background information that he thought was useful for the board to consider. And I looked at it yesterday afternoon for the first time, so, yeah, so I've not fully gone through it. I've read it, and it appears to at least indicate that there was some statements made at town meeting. I've not gone back and, you know, I've not looked at it other than going through it.
If only NCAM could have that.
What's that? Oh.
If only North Andover CAM could have that.
Do you do a transcript of town meetings?
I don't know if they do a transcript of town meetings, to be honest with you. Yeah, I mean, I know it's possible.
There will be at least minutes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say there will be at least minutes.
Would council that, so like we have,
This was our
Smolik and
warrant
Vaughn.
article, so.
yeah, we have
that would
Smolik
be-
and Vaughn's warrant article records
Right, except
from
for-
then, but there's also every town meeting since then that we don't have, right?
There is. I don't want to go. I don't want to go, and I don't want to have anybody going on a random fishing expedition.
Yeah.
You know, one of the problems is, in some ways, would it be possibly helpful to know what happened then? Sure, because obviously at the end of the day, as family things go on, it's like a family, you know, wives' tale. You
Right.
hear it over the years, and I'm sure it's changed from 30 years ago to now.
Right. But he's given us enough, I mean, this looks like, you know, it's an actual copy of a warrant article, and so it's at least something, it's not a fishing expedition, there's something to start with and base it on, and that, I don't know how to interpret what this says versus what our bylaw says. So that's why I thought it would be useful to have.
Well, and I can try to dive into this a little bit more since I'll have time when I come back from vacation or on a 7-hour plane flight.
I'm glad you didn't say you're going to take it with you going.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that it actually kind of like ran through my mind. I do have a 7-hour plane flight both ways.
Boundaries.
Who needs sleep when you have toddlers?
You're not getting it either way.
Are there any other questions? I understand what you're looking for in
So I have
terms
another
of.
question about trying to get a little bit more input also is, at the last hearing we had for this, someone from the,
Conservation.
he wasn't speaking on behalf of the Conservation Commission, but, you know, he pointed out that they consider the wetland alone to be the resource area, not the buffer zone. So that, I would
That's
like to
not-
get a better understanding on the
Well-
accuracy of that, which is correct.
He's not
If-
a zoning
What?
expert in any way.
Well, no, but.
No, but it's, right, well, that's why I'd like, I mean, but that was from someone
I think what he was saying was that there are certain parts of the resource area that you can build in, and that the commission allows you to build in.
But did our bylaw say that the resource area is not included in the contiguous buildable area?
No, not our bylaw, the state wetlands.
The Wetland Protection Act.
That was the big,
No,
huge debate.
That was-
Our
but-
bylaw says it is.
But I think,
No, our-
That's where the Andor
no.
came in. Right?
The state allows you to include
Oh, in the contiguous.
this,
No, the state
No,
does allow
this-
you to include it in the contiguous
Yeah.
buildable area, the buffer zone, whereas North Andover.
and our bylaw says you can't count the resource area in
Right.
the contiguous buildable area.
Maybe-
So the question is the resource area just the wetland or also the buffer zone?
And I think The North Andover bylaw says you cannot count, I think it's a resource area under both the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaw.
Right, but if our Conservation Commission says the resource area,
Well, first of all, our
He
Conservation
said-
Commission said nothing.
he said nothing, exactly. But
So
it raised a question
I-
to me of,
yeah, so
I
I
want to
think-
know what is the resource area?
Yeah, so I think we should not discuss his input just because he was
No.
because he was not here as a member of the board.
Right, but
he was
then-
not here as an expert. He was not in a
I
butter.
understand that, Mike, but that's why I say I want to get an answer on it. 'Cause
Right,
I'm-
and so
I'm not
the-
taking his word
and so
for
the
it.
town council had provided a bit of a briefing on that matter. And
She
it is
commented
in-
on and/or, but not necessarily
At the end of the
what
day,
the resource area is.
at the end of the day, her opinion was it wouldn't, if I recall correctly.
It would not.
North
It,
Andover
I
bylaws.
don't think she commented on what the resource area is.
No, but what she commented on was that the North Andover bylaw would stand, which is what the finding, or what the initial denial of building was given on, based on.
She was basically saying we cannot overturn the denial.
Right.
And not get into the and/or,
Yeah,
which we're trying not to get into tonight.
I'm
Thank you.
avoiding the and/or for all my life. But you still have, I mean, not only is there the CBA to look at, but there's also the lot area.
Right, and that's a question I had regarding this
The
warrant article.
grandfathering.
And the question on the contiguous building area, I guess, you guys see it a lot clearer than I do as far as what the resource area is, so.
Well,
it's still not
the
clear to
resource
me.
area is defined on the map, includes the 100-foot buffer around that, according to North Andover town law, which is where we get
Presently,
it.
Frank, that's the way it is. Presently, it includes the 100-foot
Right.
buffer zone.
Not
That's the way
according
it's
to
written
state
in the
law.
North Andover bylaws.
Right.
You have it in your mind that it's just the wetland itself.
No,
Just the state
I understand the distinction, I guess.
Okay, so
I'll
what I'm
look up
gonna do
that
is,
section.
I'll reach out to town council regarding the issue of things being grandfathered, and if we can get some guidance on that. Steve, did you have anything that you had questions for?
Nothing further.
Okay. What I'm going to do, if you don't have any objections,
do we
because,
want to bring in public comment?
hold on, because it is 8:30, and obviously this is going to be going on to next month, when we get to throw two more into the mix. Okay. I do, if you don't have an objection, want to let any abutters or anyone here for public comment, because if they're not able to be here next month, they,
Absolutely. I tried to make a list of what you'd like us to look at. I just want to go through what I have, in case anybody else has anything else you'd like us to look at. I have the question of runoff, question of flooding in wetlands. I think there's a question of whether or not, how much more water go into the pond. I think there was a question on that. And there's a question as to the location of the driveway.
yeah, just, I understand you're not, because I don't want your clients having to spend more money and potentially having to come back because we approve something that has a driveway. One thing I do want is when we're dealing with runoff, factor in this driveway. And like I say, whether you're going off to the left or the right, the driveway is basically going to be this close to the same length. Just give me, even if it's a pencil mark of, this is where we had looked at the drive. If the driveway were to be placed here, this is what we're looking at for runoff.
Okay.
Because I don't want them spending more money to have these plans redone.
No, I appreciate that. One other question I have is, what's the deadline for submittal for the next meeting?
You know what? I think, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's August 17th?
Yes.
It's August 17th. I only know that because I'm away on vacation.
And I'm just going to ask Dennis, since he's going to be doing a lot of what you've asked him to do, can you meet that?
Probably not. We'll do our best, but most likely no.
Okay.
Okay, if we can't, then we may, well, she'll come back next month.
Well, I'm going to say this too. Just going based off of how this one is going, I am guessing
That you'd like the same thing on the other ones too.
we're going to want the same things on the other ones. Just, get all the ducks in a row. any new abutter things that come through, because obviously legal notice goes out, I'm sure we'll get some flooding through. I'll make sure you get, so that you can try to be prepared if
Okay.
it comes through before the 17th. But next month's meeting, which is in September, right? Okay, yep, September, we'll probably go over into October.
Yeah, I assumed it would, especially with the other lots, but I thought we could come back on this lot at the next meeting and tell you where we're at, if we haven't submitted it in time.
I just I don't want you or your client strangling your poor engineer over here.
See,
for-
that's why I ask it. Because I've learned, if I give the deadline, it doesn't mean anything.
It's a short deadline for him.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to just raise that.
Okay. Anything else? Does the board want anything else included that you're looking for? I will deal with the town council aspects.
Just to comment that, so it looks like if that driveway's 198 feet and it's 20 feet wide, that's about 4,000 square feet of the lot. That would be driveway related. That would now be paved. That's not paved today, which gets back to the runoff, the whole, what would it be like after the fact?
It's not an insignificant hydrology.
There you go, like the big words. Anything else?
Is it worth looking at all? I believe the no build zone around a wetland is like 25 feet or 50 feet?
50.
50? Is it worth getting that line on here to talk about variance back to the 50?
I think it would actually be helpful, at least with the one at the top of the map, just because I don't know where the wetland is on that.
it's-
Right,
and it-
good, but just
I
where
even
the
looked on
50-foot line
the
is
GIS
on
maps
that.
for the town, and I could not figure out where the wetland is, so.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So 50 mark, runoff with driveway, the pond. Okay. Is there anybody from the public that would like to come and speak now that you have all patiently waited? I just need your name and address.
Michael Hillman, 890 Dale Street. I moved into 890 Dale Street in '98, so just after the two properties across the street were subdivided and built on. The things I can, I guess, speak to and confirm what Ellen said about the wetlands. First of all, I have more to lose than any of the abutters, because that land is perfect for me to walk dogs in. And for 25 years, that's where I walk my dog.
I hope your neighbor knows that.
Well, my neighbor has been Joan Cashman for most of that 25 years, and she knew that a lot. She definitely knew that. So at any rate, that first, I guess, buffer area near the road is definitely never or very rarely wet, because that was one of Jake, who is gone now 10 years, his favorite place. So I'm definitely here to support the petition. I will undoubtedly be back, so you'll see my face next month. The one thing that I will tell you, I own a business in town that, because of Amazon coming into town, we got moved out, and then because of some wisdom and some intelligence of folks in this building, a space was found for us to put our business and stay in the town, and so I'm looking for more of that wisdom in this case. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Byron Leonard, 997 Dale Street. I've known Ellen all my life. Well, no, not the first year, because I came from Virginia, you damn Yankees. Anyways, I would hope this board or whoever needs to give her the finding or variance she needs to go forward. That's all I can say. I don't have any wisdom about anything.
Thank you. And the applicant is always welcome to come up and speak if she would like. Please, feel free.
So I have written a couple of comments, but before I start those, I just wanted to let you know that in the letter that John Smolak and Brian Vaughn wrote, John Smolak is a neighbor and a friend. He was practicing law 30 years ago, so he is well aware.
He's not old enough to have been practicing 30
He
years ago.
is. We all are.
He's older than me.
He looks great.
He does. But he was practicing law, I would think 30 years ago, if not very close. So, and Brian Vaughn grew up down the street on Winter Street. So they both know the area. They've skated on the pond. They know how the wetlands go. So on a very particular basis, they're aware of it. But what I want to address is their letter, and I just ask you to remember 3 keywords in the letter. On his first page, he refers to unsuspecting owners having their land slashed in value. So it's that idea of not having any idea. And when I went to Paul Hutchins in January of '22, with the plan, assuming that I was going to have no trouble because it was grandfathered, I then found out for the first time that there was going to be a problem. So we are unsuspecting homeowners and landowners in that. The other thing is, on those 3 lots, only since 2010, it's $140,000 of taxes. And whether this meets the letter of the law or not, I think that there has to be consideration made for us preserving that land and preserving it well and paying those taxes all those years. Technically, I think we probably don't meet any kind of refund because it has to be done in a certain amount of time. But if we didn't know we needed consideration, then how could we ask for it? The second thing that he mentions is that suddenly and without any notice, it was only recently that the town began interpreting, notice the word interpreting, the language of the zoning bylaws CBA provision in a way which is radically different from how it has consistently interpreted and applied it since its inception over a period of 30 years. That's simply unfair and unjust to homeowners. And the last key word is undue hardship. We're not only asking for variances, we're asking for extra consideration because of undue hardship. To deny my family our request will cause undue hardship for us through no fault of our own. My sister and husband have health issues and need to retire. We had hoped that my brother would be able to enjoy the financial ease that the sale of the land would provide, but this process has lasted so long that he was never able to enjoy it. He passed on July 4th, leaving steep medical bills which would be a burden to his survivors. And I would like to retire from landscaping one of these years. The sale of these lots will help each of us tremendously. I also want to mention that the fact that only one of the 3 lots in question can be discussed this evening is through no fault of my own or of Attorney Johnson's. And yet, next month, we will have to do this all over again with considerable financial burden to the family. My grandparents moved to North Andover in the late 1800s, and my family has always been in service to the town. If you haven't yet read my June 6th letter to the board, I suggest that you give it your attention. In more recent history, I was one of the first members of the Open Space Committee. Another woman and I initiated the town beautification project where individuals or businesses adopt one of the traffic islands in town. And for years, I have maintained the traffic island across from the Stevens Coolidge place. I encourage you to remember that historically, North Andover enjoyed a small town community spirit where citizens helped each other and where town governments made exceptions when they made sense and honored reasonable requests for leniency. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ellen's letter explained the application.
I saw that. I have a question. So before, and I'm going to just throw in the other 2 lots, because I'm assuming, am I correct to assume that 13, 14, and 15 were all one lot at one point?
I've not gone back into the title, but since the plan was put on that divided it, I would assume it was, but I can get the answer to that question.
So one of the things I'm curious about is when the property was actually divided. Because if we're putting emphasis on Smolik and Vaughn's letter, one of the things he says is zoning changes would likely have the support of town meeting to either file preliminary subdivision plans or A&R plans to begin the process of attempting to grandfather or freeze those rights. It appears that the Cashman family attempted to secure its investment in this way over 30 years ago by dividing their land into segregated buildable lots. So, I am not, and James, maybe you can put in on this a little bit for me. Preliminary subdivision plans, and I've dealt with subdivision plans, or an A&R. Is that, would you see that as being different from splitting a lot? Or is it one and the same?
I think it's one and the same, right?
Yeah. It's all in the creation of lots, it's all the same.
I'd like to
It's
know
just different
when,
ways of doing it.
I'd like to know when the lots were split, if that's, because it
It matters.
the letter is making it sound as if 1986 happened, we changed, and they then split their lot. And I'm looking at the deed, or I looked at the deed. But I can't tell, without taking a massive amount of time away from focusing on you guys, I guess I'm wondering what the history of the actual lot is. Was 13, 14, 15 all one, and then at some point in time, they split it?
And what was that some point in time that it
And,
actually really
yeah,
matters?
what is that date of the some point in time?
So we'll get the answer.
So that is something, if
So-
you're wanting us to,
So the question is,
I want to know when the lots were split, because the impression I'm getting, this is what I'm getting from this presentation, is that, and I understand 14 and 15 isn't in front of us right now, but it actually factors in at this point, and it will factor in for next month. My understanding is that all of this property was one piece of land.
26 acres.
Okay, we'll go with 26 acres.
It's in Ms. Cashman's letter.
Okay, does it say when
What
it's
year,
split?
the 8 lots that were sold on Dale Street, what year was that? Doesn't
So the
remember.
last was in '98.
They were sold.
Yeah, you have to come up to the mic, please.
They were sold one at a time as my parents needed income.
Yeah.
So it started in the 80s, and these were all grandfathered in before 2-acre zoning was approved.
Yeah.
So
Well,
one by
that's not
one.
I just want to correct, that's not grandfathering, because if the zoning hasn't changed, then the zoning was 1 acre. So there's no issue of, you're just talking before the 1986 zoning change.
Right.
Okay.
The land, our family land originally abutted the Smolak farmland. So as my father needed income, he started selling the lots closest to the Smolak.
Okay.
So all of the lots on Dale Street between Smolak's and the corner of Winter and Dale were owned by my father and sold one by one as he needed income, and none of them were 2 acres.
Okay. So it started in the 80s.
Yes.
So that's what I want
would
to know.
say-
So,
Yeah.
Ms. Cashman?
So I
just in-
think, I think I have a list of what year, and I think Mark has it too, but I have it with me. I can leave it with you before I go.
It would be better if you, I don't want you to give us anything that's original. So there's,
we can submit that.
okay. So you have plenty of time to submit it, because unfortunately, whether we like it or not, whether it's 1 lot in front of us or 3 lots in front of us tonight, it wouldn't end up being resolved one way or another. So
Yep.
it makes more sense for it to go through your council and come to us with the other stuff he's going to provide.
Okay.
Do you know if, as he sold the lots, he divided them, or if they were all
They were all
divided?
divided at
this
once.
one time, and then he
Yeah.
just sold off separate lots?
Yes, I have the original plan.
Is this May 1st, 1987 date not the date of the subdivision? The one that's on the map of the subdivision?
No, this is,
That's just when the map was made?
It's a land court plan.
I have a copy of the original plan. I don't have it with me, but it does have a date on it.
And then the land court drafts it.
As Dennis indicated, this is when it was filed in land court, but it would have had a sign-off by the town prior to this, that has to go through the engineering department at land court.
It sounds like what you have has that.
So there may be, we're happy to, to find that plan.
Well, yeah, but it looks like it was recorded in 91.
which is a chunk of time. Well, no, June of '88.
5 years.
No, I'm seeing, June of 1988.
Is when this was signed off on. The surveyors were in 1987.
Oh, 1991, yeah, okay, gotcha.
So
Sorry, too many
there's-
dates.
There's lots of
Yeah.
dates here.
There are lots of dates.
Okay, so as of 1991 is when it's recorded. All right, I'm gonna have to work on swallowing all of this. Is there anything else from the board before I send our applicant for a month-long homework project?
Just one quick question. The lots that were in the exhibits that were built after the zoning bylaw change, did they have to come to the zoning board for a variance?
No, because they got, so when they want to build, they go to the building inspector to get permits, or
Right.
they go through the permitting process. Back then, less than a decade, the building inspector was issuing permits and giving them. And then my assumption, and then,
Well, more than a decade, right? In the 90s.
well, 1986 is when this was done, and then 94, 95, and
So
96.
Within the decade.
Within a decade, building permits were just issued.
Without any,
Without, because they didn't have to come here, because the understanding, what council is making the argument is, the building inspector in 1994 said, oh, you're one of the grandfathered lots, yup, you have all of your setbacks, you're good to go, here's your permit, have fun. So they never would have come here, versus fast forward to 2023, they go to Paul and say, hey, we want a building permit, and Paul goes, we're 2 acres, you're only 1. Now, is it because the building inspector in 1994, 1995, and 1996 was also the building inspector in 1986? So fully understood what we don't have the missing pieces are, possibly.
but there's nothing in these exhibits that says they didn't get it. It's just they got a building permit.
They got a building permit. put it this way, we can answer that question right now. Basically, look at the building permit, and is there a house on 837 Dale Street? If you want to come up to the podium, yeah.
Yes, there is a house at 837.
Okay, is there and you've told us before, okay, that's 837. You also told us that there's a house on 863 Dale Street,
863,
863, and that there's a house on 875.
yes.
So, where's that other map? So these building permits that were given to us were actually used to build houses.
Right.
I guess one of the questions we can ask, because the applicant would know better than us, Lot 8. I guess I'll ask this, are you familiar with the plan?
Yes.
Okay. Lot 8, does that, oh, yeah.
8 sold in 1990.
And that has a house?
Yes.
Was there a house on it before 90?
No.
Okay.
None of these.
None of these had houses when they were sold? Okay, so 1990. Lot 9.
It was sold somewhere, it was originally my sister's lot, and she sold it and moved to Maine. So it was either in 94 or 95
Okay.
that was sold.
And was that one built upon?
Yes,
Lot 10?
that's me,
Okay. I'm assuming there's a house?
yes.
Okay. Do you remember when your house was built?
1988.
Lot 11?
Sold in 1995 to Mertco Builders.
Lot 16?
16 is, 15? 12?
16's
Six-
not buildable.
Oh, 16 is not
16's the
buildable, sorry.
pond.
That's the
Lot
pond.
12,
Lot 12?
sold in March of 1998 to, again, Mertco Builders.
Okay. And that is all of your family's land? That were-
Originally, yes.
Okay. And then, of course, we're dealing with 13 and 14 and 15 will be next month.
Right.
Okay. So basically, it looks like the oldest one is 98. Right? Yep.
So,
No,
Yours is 88.
the most recent are
newest one
98.
is 1998.
Yes.
Yeah, the most recent lot sold and built upon was 1998.
Okay.
And your lot at 10 was built on in 88.
Yes.
And what is this? Is it 6? Is that on the corner?
That was my mother's house. After she passed, we sold it, but originally it was her house, and that cinder block building was part of her land, and that's where we had the horses.
Okay,
So then when it was all subdivided, she ended up with her own piece of property.
okay. So that was established in 87 when this was,
I
Divided
have the
up.
information at home, I don't have it here.
But at the same time as the subdivision.
Well, and it had a previously existing house,
right,
Right.
Yes.
so,
which matters.
Which matters.
right.
When did that sell?
Her house, 2019, I think. I'd have to look it up.
Do you remember when the house was built? Just roughly.
1950-ish?
Okay. So that was the first.
Say it again?
That was the first.
One.
That was the first and only for all those years. Growing up, all that land was just open space.
Okay. All right, I think that gives me what I needed on that.
The
Thank
answer to
you.
one of your questions was this all owned at one time? The plan indicates it's a subdivision of Lot 7, as shown on a certain plan, which I'll pull out, but that note would indicate that the land prior to the subdivision may have been one parcel. But I'll confirm that by pulling out Lot 7 on that plan.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that would make sense.
That is also what you were roughly just outlining, is that this was all one area with just the house in the corner,
Yes.
and then subdivided at the same time into these parcels. And sold it gradually.
I will say personally, the date at which it was subdivided matters, because it tells me about how reasonably we can expect to think of this as
Well-
grandfathered.
So the plan was done in 87,
Right.
but held until 91.
Right, but, okay, but was that when it was proposed, or was it proposed before 1986?
Well, I mean, I'll say this much. Counsel, you can correct me if my understanding of this is wrong. You can draw out plans,
Right.
but doesn't mean you do anything with them.
Right, no, I agree that, yeah.
So
But it was drawn up in 87.
it was drawn up in 87.
Is this the first record of that, I guess?
It sounds like it might not be. Aled might have
Right,
something at
so-
home that she'll submit for next time.
Right.
That would predate this, because if this is the first record that we have, it's May 1st, 1987 of the subdivision, that would be after the 1986 town meeting.
That's why I'm asking this, right?
Right.
Because if if the first record's 1985, that's different than if the first record's 1987.
Right,
To me, it is.
agreed.
Okay.
But why would they divide it into 1 acre lots if they didn't assume or were told that it would be a buildable lot?
Are all all of these, are the rest of these all 1 acre lots? Do you,
14,
15's bigger
15.
than 1 acre, right?
Well, no, I mean, everything's shown on the plan.
The number's written on them.
which number?
Oh, no, sorry, no, that's,
No.
sorry.
There's
No, I
lots of
thought,
numbers
I'm,
on
yeah, no.
Yeah, I
just-
mean, I'm not that good at reading.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, no, it just has the side dimensions, it doesn't have the area.
I mean, 15 just by eye looks bigger than 13 and 14.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I'm interested in is, some of the lot lines on this are funny.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 and 9 and 11. I guess I don't understand. I also don't understand why 12 and 16 are 12 and 16 versus just 12.
Well, I think it was because 16 wouldn't be buildable, so they wanted to
Yeah, but
pay less
so
Tax
what?
taxes
reasons.
on that.
Throw it
Yeah,
on
tax
there.
reasons.
Because they paid $9 in tax for all of that area instead of
Although,
including
I
in
think
that.
at least my lot, for example, has a buildable section and an unbuildable section, and they
Oh.
are taxed separately.
Yeah, so-
Interesting. I don't know. Do we have any tax lawyers?
No. Okay. Yes,
I can answer some of those questions.
if you want to just come up to the mic.
So the reason that the lots on Dale Street,
Are funny?
10, 11, 12, funny, it's my fault. Because my father told me I could build a house wherever I wanted. And that's where I wanted it. So they had to, as they were designing the plan, and I think it was 1986, they just shifted all the other properties around because I didn't realize at the time that it was
Yours-
gonna cause a problem.
Because
but-
your house doesn't face the street, it's sort of off on
Right.
an angle, so to get all the setbacks, they had to,
Yes,
and
Ah,
if I'm not mistaken, you come up Dale Street, it's pretty hilly, you probably need some flat area, so that would dictate property lines still.
where you put a house.
Thank you. It's nice when you lived in the place your whole life.
Yeah. Good context.
Okay. I'm going to agree with you that I think subdivision of lot 7 probably is showing that this is the first, but if we can just see what it looked
Yeah,
like.
I'll pull it out. And your question as to what the date of the plan is, we need to provide that to you, so.
Yeah.
I don't have that with me, so I'm not going to try to guess when that was. But
I will also be asking town council, just if there's any input regarding this grandfathered aspect. And then I think there's just a lot of runoff issue that you guys are gonna address. Right, anything else we want to send them home with?
And
before
the
we go home?
50-foot buffer line.
yeah, the 50-foot buffer.
And the 50-foot buffer line, yes. And I would probably make note for those somewhere on 14 and 15, because if there's wetlands, you know they're gonna come up.
We know some of the questions.
Perfect.
Okay.
Just times it by 3. So I have to ask, even though I know the answer, you can continue until next month, or you can have us take a vote.
No, we'll continue to next month, because it's fun to see you.
Listen,
Glad
if
you
we're,
like hanging out.
if we're together come Christmas time,
There's a problem. Well,
we like cookies.
yeah, cookies are good. Some
Can't ask-
eggnog too?
I'm okay, yeah, good
Yeah,
eggnog,
that's okay.
A little vodka in the eggnog, I don't mind.
Spike
Um,
and chill out.
And
We
then
would
you have
just
a-
need you to sign a waiver.
Vote.
I'm gonna get to the vote, I'm not forgetting, I promise. I wanted to make sure I got out the waiver part first. Okay, so can I have a motion to continue the public hearing until September 12th?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. A vote unanimous? Aye. Okay. Then we are going to move,
Does that mean that he has to have his plan done by the 17th?
so, no, what he is under the understanding of is we are going to have 14 and 15 thrown at us next month. So I'm sure that it's going to come with multiple questions. He is not going to be able to get to us what we need by next month. But my assumption is we will be back on all of this in October. Because if this took us 2.5 hours, wait, right?
Yeah.
Then 2 more properties.
An hour and a half
Yeah, hour and a half.
on one property,
It's gonna go a while.
It's gonna probably go a little while.
So likely this will come back next week, or next month, and then continue again.
Yes, and also we have additional, I'm sure we'll have additional applications.
And I just want to, September 1st is the deadline for additional material for this application.
So this application is the 17th of August.
So for new applications, it would be 17th, but the deadline for any documents would be September 1st.
September 1st.
Right.
Anything for 13. And I know we have our funky thing going on with 14 and
So hopefully
15.
we'll get that resolved.
I'm going to say that obviously water issues are going to be something that are going to come up. So if it's something that is submitted by September 1st on what we're dealing with on 13, that could be beneficial to you on 14 and 15. I highly recommend it.
If nothing else, we'll give you an update as to where we are with water issues. Since Dennis has to work it out.
And we'll go from there.
Okay,
Great.
very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, I lost my. Oh, Board of Appeals election for clerk. All right, so in terms of our wonderful opening of clerk position, which I'm very sad to have to label, I'm not going to say fill because there is no filling the shoes of Alan Kusha.
Succeed.
To further his amazing presence. So Ron has served as chair. I have Michael as my vice chair. I am chair. If one of you would like to take chair, I'm more than willing to give it up, especially with findings and variances. If you don't want to take chair, that leaves you two wonderful men.
I'm gonna say, since you said, no, I'm trying to be just courteous. He raised his hand first. He prompted me. Okay, and so I'm gonna be respectful and say, he raised his hand, I mean, if you don't want it, I'll take it, but he raised his hand first, so he deserves first right of refusal.
He wants to refuse it.
He's going to refuse it.
My question to Frank is, if you knew that Steve was gonna raise his hand, would you still have raised yours?
See, I wasn't raising my hand to take it. I was
No, see, people.
volunteering to agree to put my name in the hat.
See, what happened is people recommended
If
that.
no one else agreed to put the name in the hat,
So I
then
do see
I would have
a
been the only
hat
one.
here.
But I was.
We could literally draw it out of the hat. If you would like to do
Take
that.
it or flip a coin, whatever you wanna do.
I don't have a coin.
Hold on, I got Cordis.
There we go.
This is how diplomatic we're doing
Rock,
this.
paper, scissors. Where?
Live on TV.
We're the zoning board.
You don't want to, but if you want
It's like
to,
football.
I'm saying,
All right.
put my name in the hat, but first right of refusal is yours.
No.
So first right of refusal, you get to pick
Wait,
your
wait,
side.
who's what?
That's
Okay.
He spit it out first.
Wait, but so is that to take it or to refuse it?
His choice. Good question.
Okay, so
well.
so what is it? If it's heads, is it yours, or if it's heads, is it Steve's?
Okay, heads it's me, tails it's him.
Okay, heads.
Do you have a bleep function?
All right. Boy, I'm glad I went. Gotta love the volunteer spirit in this town.
We're the zoning board. We have a little bit of fun with this.
So do we still need to officially vote today?
Okay, so yes, we are going to still do an official vote because this was really just.
I vote for Frank.
Would you like a motion?
Can I have a motion to appoint Frank as our new clerk?
I'll second that.
Okay. Vote.
Aye. Aye.
Oh yeah, hold on. I have to do this by name. James.
Aye.
Ron.
Aye.
Michael.
Aye.
I am an I.
Aye. Unanimous.
Did you skip Frank? Aye.
Unanimous.
Frank, would you like to vote? So we have one nay by Frank,
Luckily, it doesn't have to be unanimous.
and you will now be our new clerk. I will help you through it.
You're gonna need
You
some
will
help,
now
thank
get
you.
to sit right next to me.
Okay.
I don't bite, I promise. Can I have a motion? That's everything, right? That's everything. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
That's the zoning board for you at 9 o'clock, and we are done.